Hello YouTube. So generally my audience is you're pretty read up, right? You're pretty savvy about the world. And most of you, at least those of you in Europe, will know that we have an election this week. We get to choose our representatives in the European Parliament. And I've been sitting here and trying to figure out the best way to convince you guys that your voice is worth being heard, essentially. Which is surprisingly difficult because the problem with the EU and the problem with these elections is that nobody really knows very much about them. We had the Eurovision Song Contest a little over a week ago, and Austria won with a bearded drag lady, and that was wonderful for acceptance and wonderful things. But something that I figured out was that in the last elections, Europe-wide, we only had a turnout of 43%. And the last time we had Eurovision, the number of people watching was 170 million, which incidentally is actually about the same number of people who turned out the vote last year, which is... I mean, Eurovision's good and everything, and Miss Verse did really, really well, but that's a little bit depressing, right? The UK actually has an even worse voter turnout than the rest of Europe. Since 1979, when we first had European-wide elections to send people to Strasbourg and to Brussels, we have never had voter turnout higher than 40%, which kind of makes me question the legitimacy of the parties that we are sending to represent the electorate of 45 million eligible voters in the UK. But I guess that's another topic for another video. I lived in a country without democracy for a couple of years. I lived in China, and I found it frustrating there that people were uninterested in politics. But who can blame them when, yes, there's a mayor who is corrupt and he is spending all of your money on projects that you don't want to happen, but there's nothing you can do about it, right? So the best thing to do is to disengage yourself from it. But what ended up happening is that they started engaging with other countries' democratic processes. Obama is so popular over there, probably more popular than he is in the USA, to be completely honest. And there is an innate desire, I think, in humanity to have your voice heard, and for those people who are making decisions about your life to have at least a certain form of legitimacy. I keep on bringing up the word legitimacy. And I want our EU to be legitimate, because otherwise there are going to be things that you don't agree with that go through. Maybe you're pro or anti having a European army, because that's probably going to be voted on in the next 5 years of European Parliament, so bet you didn't know that. There's the ACTA legislation, which is got a load of really dodgy wording about like internet freedoms and the ability to share content online, and that's being batted around European Parliament at the moment. There's the huge trade agreement that is going on between the USA and the EU, the largest trade agreement ever in the history of humanity, and there's a load of trouble with that, possibly having corporations being able to take money away from governments and like it's all a bit crappy. There's also like banking regulation and the capping of bonuses and financial reform and like social welfare, small things like food packaging and labelling, and the fact that you can work and study anywhere in the EU. Like I am not going to sit here and tell you my political stance, because those of you who watch these videos will probably know my political stance, but you are going to have an opinion on the things that Europe votes on. And so you'd better damn well do your research on the people that you're ticking the box of this week, because otherwise, if you decide to just sit this out because you think that UKIP have already won, then I'm sorry, but you have no right to be annoyed at anything that Nigel Farage says on Question Time ever again. The most important thing here is voter engagement, and there was there's a minor party in the UK called the Pirate Party, and they had a very good advert that shows the problem with low voter turnout. The fact that if only 30-something% of people turn out, you only need overall about 10% or even lower of the population to vote for a crazy party, and a crazy party will go in. Now, I'm not going to say any names, because the UKIP video will come later, but we sent 2 BNP, British National Party, like a fascist party, we sent 2 MEPs to Europe last time, and I really wish that we learnt our lesson, but I don't think we have. So yeah, that's how I've been feeling about the European elections. This is a little bit of a different video. Look, I'm unscripted. Okay, some questions. What's your issue with the EU? How do you feel about the UKIP surge that we're having and the apparent surge of the far right all over Europe? And why do you think that not just the UK but the whole of Europe is so disengaged? And how can we change that? Because I want this political project that we're taking part in, I want it to work, and it doesn't work yet. Yeah, bye.